Welcome to A New Capitalism, the podcast that will show you how you can invest your money to help create a more just and prosperous economy for all. Here's Frank Altman.
I'm happy to be joined today by Amit Bouri, the visionary Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of the Global Impact Investing Network, the leading nonprofit organization dedicated to increasing the scale and effectiveness of impact investing around the world. Under his leadership, the GIIN, as it's known, has grown into a global movement engaging investors across sectors to deploy capital towards investments that generate positive social and environmental impact alongside financial returns. Amit's pioneering work has helped shape the rapidly evolving field of impact investing and position it as a powerful force for addressing society's most pressing challenges. Amit, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
It's been a long time since the GIIN got started, and I think that my former organization, Community Reinvestment Fund, was one of the early members of the GIIN and has been participating and watching the growth over the years. But maybe you could tell us a little bit about what inspired you to co-found the Global Impact Investing Network.
Sure. Thank you so much for the question. And it's really an honor to be part of this discussion. So personally, from a career development standpoint, I wasn't exactly sure kind of where the right role would be for me eventually, but I did know from a very early point in my career that I wanted my career to be focused on purpose and at the intersection of sectors, how the public, private, and civil society could kind of interact to solve big, pressing social and environmental issues at scale. I ended up working at a consulting firm called the Monitor Group, specifically a part called the Monitor Institute, that did consulting work for social sector organizations, and had the pleasure of working with the Rockefeller Foundation back in 2008 and 2009 on how they could best mobilize more private investment capital to address social and environmental problems. We didn't really have the language impact investing, but we knew what we were trying to accomplish, which is really to try to move the needle on these big systemic issues that the world was facing. I was really interested in helping design the strategy and write the business plan for the GIIN. But what really inspired me to get involved personally in founding the organization and continue to be here for the past 15 years was an amazing community of pioneering thinkers and actors all over the world. People who are working in local communities, putting money to work to help improve the livelihoods of people, whether that were in urban areas of the United States or rural parts of India or Kenya. One thing that so many amazing people had in common was this conviction that money could do so much more than just make more money, and that if we were actually going to address many of the problems that we all worry about, that we could actually invest in a better future and invest in those solutions. And that's what really kind of motivated me to become the founding employee of the GIIN, and to continue to be here all this time later.
So tell me a little bit, or tell our listeners a little bit about how the GIIN defines impact investing.
Well, our technical definition is that impact investments are investments that are made with the intention of generating a positive social or environmental impact alongside a financial return. Now, what that means in practice is the intention is key, that you actually from the outset have the goal of achieving impact. That is focused on positive impact and that it's measurable, so that investors are actually committing themselves not to just great intentions, but to understanding the results. We see impact investments happening across asset classes, so venture capital, cash management strategies, debt, all the way through to listed equities. We also see them happening all over the world. And so we have members. The GIIN now has over 450 members in 60 countries. They're active on 6 continents. And they happen across a whole variety of themes. So everything from affordable housing to increasing access to healthcare, financial inclusion, sustainable and regenerative agriculture, clean energy, advancing racial equity, gender equity, quality jobs, so many ways that investors can put their capital to work for positive impact. But that core definition, that their investments made to generate positive, measurable social or environmental impact alongside financial return is what connects all of them.
there are some principles I think that the GIIN has identified in impact investing. Could you talk a little bit about the 9 principles?
Absolutely. So one of the things when we did a kind of a 10-year stock taking of how the market had evolved right around our 10-year anniversary, we developed something called the Roadmap for the Future of Impact Investing. And the tagline was actually reshaping financial markets. And I'd like to come back to that point because we do see the need for systems change when we think about realizing the full potential of impact investing. One of the recommendations we had as part of that roadmap was to create principles for impact investing. And one of our members, the International Finance Corporation, the investment arm of the World Bank, actually took the lead on developing these principles. There are 9, as you mentioned, that essentially map out how investors can integrate impact management into the investment process. So starting from strategy and deal selection all the way through to reporting, and investors can sign up as signatories to these principles. The IFC, after a few years of being the host, actually transferred the host role to us. And so we are very honored to be the host of the Impact Principles Secretariat. But it has over 180 signatories from around the world. And they each sign on and commit to adopting those 9 principles, disclosing how they're integrating them, and then periodically getting an external verification. And this is a way of helping to signal their commitment to integrating impact into their investment process with integrity. And that, I think, is really important to underscore that the GIIN strategy is focused on scale with integrity. And so we have a number of tools, including the impact principles, which are designed to help investors really do impact investing in a way that has high integrity and rigor. That should bring confidence to the market, but also should help increase their likelihood of delivering positive results to communities and the planet.
So the field of impact investing has really grown since GIIN was started. I know individuals are looking for ways that they can individually become investors. Tell us a little bit about who the members are. Are they mostly institutional investors? Are they public, private? Are they individuals? Tell us a little bit about that.
So when we first set up, we were really oriented around how do we actually support the organizations and firms, so that are active in impact investing. So our membership is quite diverse. It includes philanthropic foundations that are using investments to complement their grant-making work. But it also includes a number of commercial actors. So everything from huge global banks that are household names to pension funds, insurance companies. We have large corporations using their balance sheets for impact investing. And then fund managers and asset managers, large and small. So huge global players all the way down to small boutiques that are 100% focused on impact. We see that is our core focus, which is to help these professional investors and these investment firms really embed impact investing with high integrity into the way that they do business. Now, for individuals who are interested in impact investing, hopefully our work helps to benefit them because a lot of these firms manage money for individuals, either as big pension fund managers, managing the retirement assets of workers, but also big banks that have individuals as their clients, so they can help develop the right strategies and approaches to help engage individuals as impact investors. But we aren't, we don't directly work with investors as members on a retail basis. We really work with institutions to help build the industry of impact investing. But for people who are interested in learning more about impact investing, they're more than welcome to use our website. We're a nonprofit, and we have a ton of resources that are available to anyone who's interested in learning more.
And the website is very comprehensive. I have to say, any individual or any institution that wants to understand this field will do well to start on the website of the GIIN. So that brings me to sort of another question related to some of the themes in my book. I have a chapter on ESG and what that means, environmental, social, and governance factors to be taken into consideration in investing. Obviously, that overlaps what the GIIN calls impact investing. But also, it's become a very sort of politicized issue. Just last week, I think, the shareholders of Berkshire Hathaway voted down every shareholder proposal around impact investing or ESG investing and DEI. And so how does that division that seems to be occurring, particularly in the United States, how is that affecting impact investing globally, or is it?
Well, and I think just to start with some kind of clarifications of what ESG is and how it relates to impact investing. I'm sure some of your listeners are some of the leading thinkers in these areas, but there may be others who are just coming up to speed on these topics. ESG and the incorporation of environmental, social, and governance factors is an approach that can be applied to essentially any company. And helping, and I think there's a number of great organizations that are thinking about how to better understand the negative and positive impacts of companies, regardless of what they're making in terms of products and services. Many impact investors are engaged in using ESG and integrating ESG factors. But what impact investing is really focused on is solving problems in communities and in the world. So impact investors will be focused not just on understanding, some of the, the impacts of, any given company, but really focus on putting capital to work to address issues like, increasing access to affordable housing or healthcare, helping to create more equitable and quality jobs in communities that sorely need them, helping to drive a transition to a more sustainable food system. And so there's some complementarity, but some differences. And I highlight those differences because that's where I think there's a real opportunity for all of us to really make sure we're engaging people from across the political spectrum in the solutions that we're trying to deliver. Because I think ultimately the impacts that impact investors are trying to achieve in the world, helping to improve livelihoods of people, particularly low and middle income people, helping to make our planet and our communities more sustainable. Those have very broad political resonance. And it's really critical that we emphasize the positive benefits that land at a kind of a household and community level of impact investing, and also the solutions that I think can be quite energizing to people across the board. Now, the political attacks that have been really focused on ESG, I think have certainly discouraged people from considering these issues for the first time. I think it's created a lot of confusion. And what I think is most critical from my standpoint is that we don't let that confusion stand in the way of the problems that we need to address as a society and the need for us to invest in a way that helps address those problems. So we have huge issues around our around climate change and environmental sustainability. We have an economy that has become way too imbalanced and needs investment to rebalance it. And we have so many other issues where investment can play a positive role. And my hope is that these political fights over language and labels don't get us distracted from the core opportunity and need for us to make impact investing at much greater scale to move the needle on issues that are being faced in the U.S., but also all over the world.
Most of the money that's in the investing world is managed. Again, you mentioned this already by pension fund managers, money managers, and others. And there's the issue, I think, of how does the individual who's participating in a 401k plan, for example, ensure that that might be where most of their investing assets are, at least at an early stage in life, that they can advocate for social investment and impact investing options. Talk a little bit about the strategies that GIIN is using to try to bring impact investing into the mainstream of money management.
We have a strategy focused on scale with integrity, as I mentioned earlier. And the reason why that's so important is that if we're going to address the big challenges that we have as a world and as a society, it's important for us to think about how to do so at great scale. So things like addressing inequality and environmental sustainability, how to protect nature, we need to do so on a national and a global level. So for that reason, we think it's really important that we engage the way that the mainstream financial markets operate. And ultimately, our vision is that impact becomes part of all investing. That any investor, large or small, is thinking about impact when they're making their investment decisions. And hopefully thinking about their success in terms of the impact that they've delivered, both in terms of the financial performance, but also the results that they've achieved for communities and for the planet. That, I think, is the key of what we're all striving for, as you put it, if we want a new capitalism. And we really want to make sure that we have a system that instead of kind of extracting value from people and from resources is actually creating value. It has a regenerative impact on the way in which our society operates and actually helps to be a force for good. Now, in order to do so, we do need to change the way that the mainstream markets operate. And for individuals who are interested in this, I think the key thing to remember is that financial services are, big and daunting as an industry, but it is a service industry, which means they're there to serve you as a client. So it's really critical that if there's something that you want, you speak your mind and look for the right types of the kind of firm that can give you the service that you require. And so if you're working with a money manager, or if you're in a 401k account, ask for more sustainable options. Most places are quite limited in terms of what's being offered to employees or to savers. But I think it's really critical to understand that there are all kinds of great opportunities where you can start to get those options on the table, but it's important that you let people know that you want them. One of the things I always encourage people to do, which I think is something you'll know more about, Frank, than I ever will, which is the opportunity with community banks and for community investments. Even checking accounts and savings accounts for people who don't have a lot of resources can be put to work to have a positive impact on helping communities. And there's a whole host of community banks and credit unions, others that people can do their banking with. But that in itself is helping to increase access to financial services and increase access to capital for many communities that end up getting left in the margins of the way the mainstream markets operate.
Absolutely. And I know that there are a number of community banks that have what I call linked deposit programs, where investors can buy a certificate of deposit, and the proceeds of that investment, if you will, or that savings, would be used for affordable housing or revitalization of a low-income community that the bank is serving. Those are all tools that the bank world is using, particularly the community bank world, because they're embedded in the communities that they're trying to serve. And in many cases, in urban areas, those communities include many areas that are low income, and that's a particularly strong role that the banks can play. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I want to move a little bit to the concept. Well, first of all, obviously, new capitalism is aimed at changing the way that the capital markets work and using incentives, both policy and regulation, and tax incentives to be part of that tool. But also spending a fair amount of time in the book talking about the role of social enterprise and enterprises that really are created to solve a problem, a social problem or an environmental problem. Oftentimes, those enterprises take the form of nonprofits, but increasingly, entrepreneurs are starting for-profit enterprises and getting them certified as public benefit corporations or B Corps in some cases. So, how does an impact investor identify and engage with those kinds of social ventures that are focused across a wide range of social issues, whether it's education or housing or food, the various things that you've been highlighting? Talk a little bit about how or if that's part of the impact investing world today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you'll see as a great strength of the impact investing community is a great diversity of investors. And that means in terms of the types of institutions, their focus, in terms of geography, themes, and strategies. And ultimately, from the GIIN perspective, what we want is a thriving market that has a whole diversity of approaches that are designed to address different problems that and opportunities that are facing communities all over the world. I think, as you point out, one of the ways in which we need to be really open-minded and creative is the vehicle and the ways of what we want to invest in. And so, of course, there's not nonprofits play a critical role. Many nonprofits are just looking for, don't have business models that support investors or investment. They need grants to support their work, and it's incredibly important to the world that we live in. There are nonprofits that actually have a design where they can produce a return, to investors. And I think those may be able to access more capital through investment markets, depending on kind of their structure. And then, of course, there's a whole range of companies that are trying to address social and environmental issues, large and small. These are all very powerful opportunities. And you mentioned B Corps and the B Corporation, which is a certification provided by a great nonprofit called B Lab. And this is a way in which companies can essentially embed the B, which stands for benefit, into the ways that they operate and actually get certified that they've done so in a way that is holistic. So think looking at how they engage with communities and the environment and other stakeholders. Those can be a powerful marker, including not just to investors, but also to consumers, to consumer-facing brand that you can see on the boxes of products that you may find in the market. What I think is important for investors to think about is that there's a whole array of structures and of investees, whether it's nonprofits, B Corps or public benefit corporations, or other types of companies that can be part of the solution to an issue. And so we see investors putting money into things like farms that are providing services to their communities through regenerative agricultural processes. And that is really designed to be a more sustainable way of stewarding the land while providing food to communities. We see investors that are focused on benefit corporations that have innovative technologies that may be targeting the climate crisis and helping to really drive solutions to some of the needs that we have to make our economy more sustainable. We have investors who are putting money into housing. Affordable housing is a critical issue that seems to be one thing that connects everyone in the world. It's a desperate need everywhere I travel, whether I go to Australia, to the Nordics, I'm going to Japan soon. All these places in the world have a need for more affordable housing. All this is to say that there's many different things that people can invest in if they're trying to have a positive impact on the world. And for the professional investors who are listening, that also means that you can develop much more holistic strategies for pursuing impact investing. You can invest across asset classes. You can get diversification that you need. And increasingly, we're seeing some of the world's largest investment firms commit significant amounts of capital to impact investing across a variety of strategies to reflect this diversity and opportunity.
So obviously, a community reinvestment fund is a CDFI, a community development financial institution. There are more than 1,000 of these organizations throughout the country. They do oftentimes, shouldn't say oftentimes, almost every CDFI has an investment arm to borrow in the debt markets to put that money back on the street in the form of loans or other investments into businesses that create living wage jobs, affordable housing, and the rest. There's obviously quite a diversity of missions that the CDFIs have as well. So there is an opportunity for a debt investor to invest in CDFIs. There are other tools that exist in the investment world, most particularly the federal new markets tax credit, which I discuss in the book. It's one of the things I'm most proud of being involved with, having been the first president of the New Markets Tax Credit Coalition and helping to get that credit passed in 2000. It's generated hundreds of billions of dollars worth of investment in very low-income communities throughout the country. But to this date, because of tax law, particularly the alternative minimum tax, individual investors have been pretty much foreclosed from being investors in the credit. So when we talk about changing the capital markets system, what is the role of policy from the GIIN's perspective? And I'm talking about tax policy or other government policies. Obviously, you're working in with governments all over the world. But what is the role there, and how do we advocate for opening up the investment opportunities to individuals, not just large banks and insurance companies and others?
Governments play a critical role in shaping markets. They have a fundamental responsibility of writing the rules of the game, if you will. And so I think public policy is really central to shaping our economic system, and would be a leader in driving us towards a new capitalism, if that's the direction that we're going in, which I certainly hope that it is. I think one of the things that's so important is that governments will really drive kind of how investors can participate in impact investing, and I hope that governments all over the world continues to see impact investing as a critical opportunity for them to pursue their broader social development agenda. is if governments are trying to make the economy work for more people, creating high quality jobs, addressing socioeconomic disparities, creating more opportunities for marginalized communities. Impact investing should be part of the solution, and governments should be working on policies that help steer more capital, investment capital, towards addressing those issues. What I hope the impact investing community can signal to those governments is that there is a growing community of investors from all over the world who have been putting money to work to improve communities locally and internationally, and that if governments are looking for partners and helping to address some of these big issues that we're facing, whether it's the need for better housing, the need for healthier and more sustainable food systems, the need for a more kind of a cleaner and more renewable energy system, that governments see impact investors as a key partner, and that they can actually play a role in helping to accelerate the flow of capital. I also think, Frank, you speak to an important opportunity, which is how do we actually engage all the public interest from people who may not be professional investors and who may not be ultra wealthy, but are kind of ordinary workers who have their own resources and want to put their resources to work and in investing in a better future for themselves and for the children and grandchildren. And I think one of the areas where I think governments have a large untapped opportunity is to figure out the right avenues by which they can protect consumers from taking on more risks that they can handle, but also to create the pathways in which people can participate, with their savings and their investments in investing in a better world. And that's where I think we'll really start to see an inflection point in the evolution of impact investing. And I hope an inflection point in our sense of social and environmental progress, where we can tap into the collective resources of society to really help to address the needs that our communities are facing right now.
That's great. And I want to explore some of the key challenges and opportunities facing the impact investing field. But we have to stop here. Coming up next time, Amit Bouri, the CEO of the Global Impact Investing Network, will break down some of the misperceptions around what impact investing delivers.
Fortunately, we have a lot of research and tools that are available, to help people have the data they need to understand that impact investing has track record. It's delivered strong returns for investors. People are pleased with their financial performance and their impact performance, and that many people that may seem like them, similar types of organizations, institutions, or individuals, have been active in the market as well.
This has been A New Capitalism with Frank Altman. If you'd like to connect with Frank and join the movement to create a new capitalism that works for all, go to frankaltman.com. Frank's book is available on print, audio, and ebook formats on all major book-selling sites. A New Capitalism is a production of Forbes Books.